Welcome to episode 2 of the YouTube vlogs. I'm delighted to see you. If this is your first time, my name's Paul Sparks. I've got a spiritual coaching business and I teach people one-to-one and do online classes. So this week I wanted to talk about a topic that comes up time and time again when I'm coaching people, and even just day to day you can probably relate to it, which is about what are the consequences when we avoid our true feelings? What's the hidden cost of when we don't listen to those feelings? And I think what I would say as a starting point is we need to understand, where do our feelings come from? Because you could argue that sometimes our feelings are not correct, right? We think something's going one way and it turns out another, or we have an instinct about something and when we find out more detail, we might not be right. But as a general rule, our feelings are, if they're coming from the right place, are our instincts. It's coming from our soul. It can be a sat nav that's directing us to whether something feels right for us or not. And I think that many people ask the question, how do you tap into that? How do you learn to trust your feelings? How do you know which ones are real and which ones are not? And I think what I would say is the answer as a starting point is very, very simple. If the feelings that you have are bringing up fear and anxiety and doubt, they're probably coming from a negative space, right? They're probably coming from some sort of reaction. But actually, if the feelings just feel instinctual, they're coming from a more neutral place or a more positive place, it's not coming through that sort of fear-based lens, then the chances are those feelings are coming from your soul, right? Is you're and giving you direction as to where it is that you should be going in the next stage of your life. So how do we tap into that is the first thing. One of the topics I love to talk about, because truthfully it drives me crazy when I hear elements of this that are not correct, is about alignment. It's a sexy word. We love the thought of being in alignment, right? People say they want to be in it, but what does it actually look like in a practical way? So for me, I think that I've seen over the years many different types of supposedly spiritual systems which tell people that the way that you align yourself is just simply positive thinking, right? But we probably all know that when you try that and you try and just think positively, very often we end up in denial and life still throws us challenges and we end up feeling worse than we did. We're like fighting against our negativity. And so we understand that, a person can positively think of the fact that they're going to be a millionaire. But it's very obvious that if that person doesn't put in hard work and they don't work and they sit on the couch all day, no amount of positive thinking is going to do it. So what I tell my clients is there are really 3 essential components to living in alignment. And that is our thoughts, our words, and our actions. When we align all 3 of those, things will flow better. You'll feel more aligned. You will feel more of your authentic self. Think about it, right? And we struggle with this every day, all of us, right? How many times are you thinking something in your head, but you say something completely different? You constantly think about kindness and you post be kind on your Instagram stories. Yet the minute you're with your friends, the words that you're using, you're gossiping about people. It's not in alignment, right? Or, that maybe you talk a good game, right? And you say, yeah, I'm going to start that business and I'm going to do this. But when it comes to your actions, you always put it off, right? I can share that, at the side of my bed, there is a chair and it's piled high with clothes. And pretty much every day I say, I'm going to put those clothes in Vinted. I'm going to sell those. I need to do something with those, right? I talk a good game, but I'm not taking the action. Something's out of alignment. And I'm sure as I'm saying this, you can all think of examples in your own life. But what tends to happen is that over a period of time, when we repeatedly live out of alignment, we get further and further away from trusting our intuition, from really hearing the messages from our own soul. And therefore we end up in confusion, right? How many times have you heard someone say, I've got to the point I don't even know who I am anymore? Right? It's the perfect indication that that person is misaligned somewhere, either in the way that they think, the way that they speak, or the actions or lack of action that they're taking. So I think step 1 is to really look at our life and say, am I in alignment? Because if we can work on that, and it's a constant battle, The more we align, the easier it will be to discern what feelings are real, what feelings are not. What people should you have in your life, what people should you not. Should you stay in a situation, or is it time to let it go? Right? And I think once we're in that alignment, it becomes much more obvious to understand and interpret those feelings. I think we want to go back to the original question. So number one, it starts with alignment. The second part, which is where we started, is what are the consequences of not listening to our feelings? So what have we said so far? When you are not living in alignment, the first consequence is that you won't even be able to interpret your feelings, right? Let alone act on them in the right way. But I think the second part is, like how many times have you felt one thing but you don't express it, right? You know that you should speak to someone and you don't do it, so you just avoid it, right? You've got feelings for someone, you don't tell them. Like, I think what we have to understand is the consequence is very simple but heavy, which is that when we don't listen to our feelings and act on them out of alignment, we will never reach our full potential. Let that sink in for a minute. We will miss opportunities. We will never reach the highest level of who it is that we could be. Maybe opportunities that are there, or like people that should be in our lives, will not be. And I think that it's a tricky one, right? Because what we also understand is that it's not as easy as just sharing your feelings. What are they shrouded in, right? They're shrouded in fear. What if the other person rejects me? What if they don't like what I've got to say? What if it changes the dynamic of the relationship? We might have doubts, right? We might think, I can't do it. I'm not able to express those feelings. We might be really shy. All extensions of the ego and looking to control the narrative of the situation. But what we must understand is that the consequence of not really sharing our feelings ultimately means that we're not going to live our potential. So this week, I want you to think about in your life, first of all, where am I not in alignment, right? Where are my day-to-day behaviors not aligned, right? And then take one step. We're not going to do it overnight, but that brings something together, right? And makes the way that you think, the way that you speak, and the way that you act more aligned within yourself. From that space, if there's anything that you are considering about how you feel, or you want to talk about how you feel, maybe think about that. Like, once you implement it, it would be really interesting for you to think about potentially having that scary conversation, telling someone how you feel, right? Expressing, I wasn't okay about this situation, right? In the right way. So the consequences of not expressing our feelings are not living our potential and not living the best life that we can. So this week, I would encourage you to find a way to be more aligned with yourself and to act on those feelings.